Hello, class, and welcome to Forensic Psychology. My name is Dr. Neil Soggie. I am your instructor for this course. This week, we are going to be diving into the fascinating realm of lie detection methods in forensic psychology. Now, deception is a fascinating and really complex phenomenon that permeates various aspects of human interactions, from our everyday conversations to high stakes criminal investigations. And before we dive into the intricacies of detecting deception, let's just take a moment and reflect upon our own experiences with lying. Have you ever lied and successfully gotten away with it? Well, of course you have. Or perhaps you've been on the receiving end of deception. What strategies do you think people use to deceive others? And how effective are they? I want you to share your thoughts and experiences with people around you, if you could, and just explore a little bit of lie detection and lying in general within human experience, because it is part of who we are. It's not an ideal part, to be sure, but it is part. Now, as you take some time and do that, I want you to kind of think about what we're going to be doing for today's lecture. Today's lecture, we're going to have, as always, I want to tell you a little story, but I also want to cover some main themes. The first one, I want to give you a little bit of some theoretical foundations, where we'll examine the psychological theories that underpin our understanding of deception. Things like, the cognitive aspect, the emotional aspect, the behavioral aspect. And we'll introduce what we call the truth default theory and its implications for detecting lies. And then we'll look at some methods of lie detection. We'll look at some of the methods used, things like nonverbal cues such as micro expressions and body language, as well as verbal indicators like linguistic cues and statement analysis. And we'll also explore the use of technology-assisted methods such as polygraph examinations and emerging technologies like functional magnetic resonance imaging. And then, of course, we'll take a look at some of the critiques and ethical considerations to be used, because there are some limitations and some criticisms of lie detection methods, particularly focusing on things like accuracy and reliability and the ethical concerns surrounding things like polygraph machines. And so all of this to round out the whole discipline of lie detection and understanding deception. Now, no story would be complete when talking about lie detection if we did not talk about Paul Ekman. Born in 1934 in Washington, D.C., he's one of those key figures in the field of psychology, particularly renowned for his extensive contributions to the understanding of nonverbal communication and deception detection. Now, Ekman's journey in psychology began with his doctoral studies in clinical psychology, where he embarked on doing some groundbreaking research that would begin to shape the landscape of forensic psychology for decades to come. In Ekman's early work, he focused on the universality of different facial expressions of emotions. There's some things that people just do with their faces that are pretty universal, and he collaborated with Wallace Freeman to develop what we call the facial action coding system, which is a fairly comprehensive tool for objectively categorizing and measure facial movements. And this system laid the groundwork then for studying what we call micro-expressions, which are very small, almost unnoticeable, fleeting, involuntary facial expressions that occur in response to emotions and can often reveal concealed feelings or deception. And one of Ekman's most influential theories is the truth default theory, which proposes that humans tend to default to believing other statements as truthful unless there are some specific cues indicating deception. And this theory has profound implications for interpersonal communications, for law enforcement and judicial system in general, shaping how we approach the detection of deception. And Ekman's research on nonverbal cues and deception has had a significant impact on law enforcement training and intelligence gathering. And his work has been instrumental in developing techniques of detecting deception, including the analysis of microexpressions, body language, and voice patterns. In addition to that, he's done some scholarly work on and wrote some books, one being Telling Lies, Clues to Deceit in the Marketplace, Politics and Marriage, and Emotions Revealed, recognizing faces and feelings to improve communication and emotional life, all of which is designed to help us to understand the emotions and the nature of communication behind deception. Now, there's an interesting TV show that came out years ago that's kind of inspired by Dr. Paul Ekman called Lie to Me. So if you ever have a chance to watch an episode of Lie to Me, you'll kind of see some of the interesting things that Paul Ekman, if you were to take his theories and take them to a bit of a dramatic extreme, what they could do. Now, as far as understanding deception, as I mentioned, it's a multifaceted phenomenon that permeates pretty much every aspect of human interaction. It influences our everyday conversations, it impacts our business negotiations, and of course, our criminal investigations. And at its core, deception involves intentionally misleading others through words and actions or omissions, often with the goal of gaining an advantage or avoiding consequences or protecting oneself. And its prevalence in society underscores the importance of detecting deception, particularly in forensic psychology, where the stakes can be high, impacting legal proceedings and the administration of justice. In forensic psychology, the ability to discern truth from deception is crucial for investigators, lawyers, judges, and other professionals involved in the legal system. Detecting deception accurately can lead to the identification of guilty parties, the prevention of wrongful convictions, and the protection of innocent individuals, of course, which is something we always want to do. On the other side, failure to detect deception can result in miscarriages of justice, with innocent individuals being wrongly accused or convicted based on false information. And understanding the dynamics of deception requires an exploration of its cognitive, emotional, and behavioral aspects. By examining the underlying psychological processes involved in lying, researchers or practitioners can develop some fairly effective strategies for detecting deception and distinguishing the truth from the falsehood. So, when we look at the theoretical foundations underlying deception, we see that there are lots of different dimensions. There's the cognitive, the emotional, the behavioral aspects of dimension, and understanding each of these sheds light on that whole truth default theory and how profound it is in lie detection. So let's take a look at the cognitive perspective, where we look at the mental processes involved in deception. Now, according to cognitive theories, deception requires some planning and some cognitive effort. It involves the suppression of truthful information and the construction of false narratives. And this cognitive load, it is argued, based upon the theory, lies as something that puts a greater cognitive burden than truth-telling does. It's easier to tell the truth. And so this leads to observable differences in behavior and cognition. Additionally, the whole theory of mind behind this suggests that understanding an other's mental states, including their beliefs and intentions, plays a crucial role in both deceiving and detecting deception. So, it's harder to lie. If we're to think in terms of the emotional dimension, there's a lot of interplay between emotions and deception. Emotions serve as both motivators and inhibitors of deception. It influences individuals' willingness to lie and their ability to conceal their true feelings. Ekman's research on microexpressions highlights that involuntary nature of certain facial expressions provide some valuable insight into the emotional cues associated with deception. Moreover, theories of emotional regulation shed light on an individual's ability to manage or suppress emotions during deceptive encounters. And so this again offers some clues to discern truth from falsehood. And finally, we consider the behavioral aspects of deception, where we can look at the observable cues and patterns that may betray a liar's intentions. There are non-verbal behavior, including body language, gestures, and vocal cues. And each of these can serve as potent indicators of deception. And really, this is where we really want to focus, because this is the one thing that we can read. And it offers some valuable clues for discerning truth from falsehood. Now, I've mentioned the microexpressions, those fleeting facial expressions that occur involuntarily and can reveal concealed emotions or deception. And when we understand the nuances of nonverbal communication, we can use that for effective lie detection. And this enables practitioners to decode subtle cues and uncover hidden truths. So when we explore the cognitive and emotional and behavioral dimensions of deception, and we put that through the lens of the truth default theory, we have a cornerstone for detection of deception. We can look at what a person is saying and doing and start to glean whether or not it is the truth. Now, let's take a look at some of the non-verbal cues. Non-verbal behavior really does serve as a powerful communication channel. Most of what we communicate is not the words, it's our tone, it's our movement. And this often conveys information that complements, and sometimes it contradicts the verbal messages. Now, in context of deception, nonverbal cues can provide some valuable insights into an individual's emotions, their intentions, and their honesty. Firstly, we explore microexpressions, these brief, involuntary facial expressions that occur within milliseconds and can reveal concealed emotions. Research pioneered by Paul Ekman has shown that these fleeting expressions, such as a fleeting smirk or a quick frown, can betray an individual's true feelings, even when they attempt to mask their emotions. And understanding and recognizing microexpressions is a crucial skill for practitioners involved in deception detection. And these subtle cues can provide invaluable clues about a person's honesty or deceit. Next, we can look at body language, the nonverbal cues conveyed by gestures and posture and movement. And body language can often reveal the wealth of information as to the person's state of mind and intentions. For example, fidgeting, avoidance of eye contact, or defensive postures like crossing the arms may indicate discomfort or nervousness, potentially signaling deception. Conversely, confident and open body language may suggest honesty and transparency. By observing and interpreting these nonverbal cues, practitioners can gain valuable insights into a person's emotional state and veracity. But, and here's the but, there is difference in people. There are some people, 2 to 5% of people, that do not have any anxiety about lying. And so body language is very hard to use here because they express confidence all the time, whether they're lying or not. So you need to be mindful of that. Then we go on to vocal cues, and things like variation of tone, pitch, and speech patterns can provide valuable clues about a person's emotional state and truthfulness. Vocal cues such as hesitations, speech rate changes, and vocal pitch fluctuations can indicate cognitive effort or emotional arousal. And this potentially reveals attempts to deceive. And things like voice stress analysis, which is a technique used to measure variations in vocal pitch and intensity, has been explored as a tool for detecting deception. Now, although its reliability and validity may remain subject for debate in a lot of the scientific community, it has still been used. So, in addition to microexpressions, body language, and vocal cues, other nonverbal behaviors such as hand gestures, facial expressions, and posture shifts can also provide some valuable insight into deception. So, by honing a practitioner's skills in understanding all of these nonverbal cues, a practitioner can indeed become a fairly efficient deception detector. Now, I want to go on and talk a little bit about verbal indicators of deception, because this provides some real insight into the structure of language and how the cognitive load and the psychological processing underlying deceptive communication finds itself being expressed. Firstly, we examine linguistic cues associated with lying, including speech hesitations, changes in tone, and word choice. And research does suggest that deception within individuals can exhibit hesitations and pauses or speech disruptions as they navigate the cognitive demands of constructing and maintaining false narratives. And these verbal hesitations can manifest as filled pauses, like a or oh, or prolonged speech onset times, pausing for a long period of time before answering, reflecting the cognitive effort involved in fabricating the lie. Moreover, changes in tone and vocal pitch can provide valuable clues about a person's emotional state and truthfulness. Deceptive individuals may exhibit fluctuations in vocal tone or pitch, reflecting underlying emotional arousal or cognitive strain. And by analyzing these vocal cues, practitioners can gain insights into a person's psychological state and assess the veracity of their statements. Additionally to that, word choice and linguistic patterns can reveal subtle indicators of deception. Deceptive individuals may use language strategically to downplay or conceal the truth, employing vague or evasive language to obscure key details or deflect suspicion. And linguistic analysis techniques such as criteria-based content analysis, which is, you can see there on the slide, offers structured approaches to evaluating verbal statements and identifying linguistic markers for deception. You can also see on the slide there something called the RM criteria, and that stands for the reality monitoring, to explore if it really happened. And furthermore, the content of verbal statements can provide valuable insights into deception. Deceptive individuals may exhibit inconsistencies, contradictions, or implausible explanations in their narrative, raising red flags for investigators. And statement analysis techniques enable practitioners to scrutinize verbal statements for linguistic anomalies, logical inconsistencies, and narrative inconsistency. And all of this aids with the identification of deceptive cues. Now let's dive into polygraphy. Polygraph examination, what we call the lie detector test, is a technique employed by forensic psychology in order to determine truthfulness through a measure of physiological responses associated with deception. So I want to talk a little bit about how these intricate physiological measures tie in with the principles of polygraphy. The polygraph test is predicated on the assumption that deceptive individuals experience heightened physiological arousal when lying. And this leads to some observable changes in key physiological parameters. These parameters typically include cardiovascular activity, so heart rate and blood pressure, respiratory patterns, so the respiration rate and depth changes, and also electrodermal activity, so they have the changes in your skin's electroconductivity. When we look at the cardiovascular measures, we're interested in things like heart rate and blood pressure because they indicate that the autonomic nervous system is aroused, which can be triggered by emotional or cognitive stress, which theoretically is associated with deception. And deceptive individuals may exhibit increases in heart rate and blood pressure during periods of heightened anxiety or cognitive load, and this reflects the physiological response to lying. Respiratory patterns also play a crucial role in polygraph examination. As changes in respiration rate and depth can accompany emotional arousal or the cognitive effort that's going on. So deceptive individuals may exhibit irregular breathing patterns or shallow breathing as they attempt to regulate their physiological responses while at the same time fabricating false narratives. And then the electrodermal activity, which is the measure of the skin's conductance, provides insights into the sympathetic nervous system's response to emotional arousal. Deceptive individuals may experience increasing sweating or changes in skin conductance due to heightened stress or anxiety associated with this line. And these fluctuations in skin conductance can be indications of emotional arousal and cognitive strain during deceptive encounters. Now, despite its widespread use, polygraphy has been the subject of scrutiny regarding both its reliability and validity. The argument is that there are lots of other factors that can demand cognitive load and emotional arousal. That's just part of life. That's what we do. And so this might simply be the presence of the examiner, or the examiner's interpretation, or the examinee's physiological and psychological state, or the testing environment, all of which can lead to false positives or false negatives. And so there's some argument that it cannot be used as the ultimate measure of what is true or not. And polygraphy, despite its popularity, therefore, faces some real questions. One of the primary criticisms of polygraphy is its susceptibility to these various factors that can influence test outcomes. For example, the examiner's interpretation of physiological responses, the examinee's physiological and psychological state, the testing environment, all of which can impact the accuracy. And so the polygraphy has really been criticized for also its lack of standardization and consistency across examiners and testing protocols. Variations in examiner training, the questioning techniques, the scoring criteria can all contribute to inconsistencies in polygraph results. And this questions the reliability of the tool itself. Now, I want to talk a little bit about cognitive interviewing, because this is grounded in cognitive psychological principles, focusing on optimizing memory retrieval processes and enhancing witness recall accuracy. The cognitive interview typically involves 4 key components. First off, rapport building, then context reinstatement, then free recall, and then focused retrieval. And the rapport building serves as a foundation of the cognitive interview, where you establish trust and rapport between the interviewer and the interviewee. And by creating a supportive and non-confrontational environment, the interviewer encourages the interviewee to feel comfortable and share relevant information freely. Then there's the context reinstatement, which involves recreating the environmental and situational context surrounding the event being recalled. And this technique aims to cue the interviewee's memory by prompting sensory and contextual details associated with the event, such as sights, sounds, smells, and emotions. And then there's free recall, which encourages the interviewee to provide a comprehensive account of the event without interpretation or prompting from the interviewer. And by allowing the interviewee to recall information spontaneously, the free recall minimizes the influence of external cues or suggestions or memory retrieval. And then we come to the focused retrieval, which involves prompting the interviewee to recall specific details or aspects of the event through targeted questioning. Now, unlike leading or suggestive questioning techniques, focused retrieval aims to guide the interviewee's memory retrieval process without introducing bias or distortion. And research has demonstrated the efficacy of cognitive interviewing techniques in enhancing witness recall accuracy and minimizing memory errors. And compared to traditional interview techniques, cognitive interviewing has been shown to elicit more details and accurate information from witnesses, leading to higher quality investigative outcomes. And furthermore, cognitive interviewing techniques have been adapted for use with vulnerable populations such as children or elderly individuals and individuals with cognitive impairment. And by tailoring interviewing techniques to unique needs and abilities of different populations, practitioners can optimize the accuracy and reliability of witness testimony in forensic investigations. Then we come to statement analysis, which really involves the systematic examination of the verbal and the written statements in order to identify what are some linguistic cues and logical inconsistencies and deceptive indicators that may reveal concealed information or deceptive intent. And this technique draws upon principles of linguistics and psychology and communication theory to analyze language patterns and uncover underlying truths. And one of the primary objectives of statement analysis is really to identify what are the linguistic anomalies or deviations from typical speech patterns that may indicate deception. There are linguistic cues associated with lines like speech hesitation, changes in tone, word choice, syntactic structure. For example, deceptive individuals may exhibit an overuse of qualifiers or hedging words, vague or evasive responses, or excessive detail in an attempt to appear credible. In addition to that, statement analysis involves scrutinizing the content of verbal and written statements for inconsistencies, contradictions, and implausible explanations. Deceptive individuals may provide conflicting accounts of events, omit crucial details, or offer explanations that defy logic or common sense. And by identifying these inconsistencies, practitioners can uncover deceptive cues and assess the veracity of the statement. Now, narrative coherence plays within this a crucial role in statement analysis because truthful accounts typically exhibit a very logical and coherent narrative structure. Deceptive statements may lack coherence, contain gaps or inconsistencies in the narrative, or exhibit tangential or irrelevant information. And analyzing the coherence and structure of verbal and written statements enables practitioners to discern truth from falsehood and identify deceptive indicators. And research has demonstrated the efficacy of statement analysis techniques in detecting deception across various contexts, including criminal investigations, witness interviews, and suspect interrogations. Now, compared with traditional interviewing methods, statement analysis offers a systematic and objective approach to evaluating verbal and written statements, and this leads to higher quality investigative outcomes and more reliable evidence. And on top of that, statement analysis can be complemented by linguistic algorithms and computational linguistic techniques, so AI can start to get into this, which automates the process of identifying linguistic cues and analyzing large volumes of text data. And by leveraging technology and interdisciplinary approaches, practitioners can enhance the efficacy and the accuracy of statement analysis in forensic psychology. Now, I want to since we've kind of talked a little bit now about technology, I want to kind of talk about some of the technologically assisted methods. First one I want to talk about is eye tracking technology, which allows us to monitor and analyze eye movements during verbal and written communication. And by tracking gaze patterns, we can identify areas of interest, visual attention, and cognitive processing. For example, research has shown that individuals tend to avert their gaze when fabricating lies, directing their gaze away from the truth to minimize feelings of guilt or discomfort. And eye tracking technology offers valuable insights into deception by revealing subtle cues and patterns in visual behavior. Then there's the functional magnetic resonance imaging. So fMRI is a neuroimaging technique that measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow. And in the context of lie detection, fMRI enables us to examine which brain regions are associated with deception, such as the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. And studies have demonstrated distinct patterns of brain activation when individuals engage in deceptive behavior. And this provides insights into the neural mechanisms underlying deception. Now, while fMRI offers unparalleled spatial resolution, its practical implications in lie detection is limited because, first off, it's extremely expensive, it's difficult to access, and of course, there are some ethical considerations with this. Then there's voice stress analysis, which is a technique that analyzes vocal cues such as changes in pitch, frequency, and amplitude to detect signs of stress or deception. And by measuring physiological changes in vocal cords, voice stress analysis aims to identify subtle variations in speech that may betray deception. Again, though, validity and reliability of voice stress analysis as a lie detection tool by itself is subject to debate. Now, in addition to eye tracking and fMRI and voice stress analysis and other emerging activities like AI and machine learning algorithms and natural language processing techniques, there are always technology companies trying to enhance the ability for identifying deception. So as we move into the space of AI and big data, of course, things are going to take a different turn. And we need to be mindful and up to date on all of that and be able to manage it with ethics and with concern. And that brings us to the whole ethical concerns. The use of lie detection methods really does raise a whole myriad of ethical considerations, including what are the privacy concerns, what are the individual rights and potential misuses of findings. So, for example, the invasive nature of some lie detection techniques, such as polygraph testing, may infringe upon an individual's rights to privacy and autonomy. In addition to that, the potential for false positives and false negatives in lie detection results can have profound consequences for an individual's reputation, their livelihood, and legal rights. Practitioners must navigate these ethical dilemmas carefully, ensuring that lie detection methods are used responsibly and ethically in forensic practice. And then there's the whole admissibility in legal proceedings. And the admissibility really does vary widely across jurisdictions, with many courts just outright excluding polygraph results and other forms of lie detection method due to concerns about reliability and validity and potential for bias. So, as forensic psychologists, it's really essential to advocate for very rigorous standards of evidence to ensure that lie detection methods meet established criteria for admissibility in legal proceedings. And this includes conducting appropriate empirical research to validate the accuracy and reliability of lie detection techniques and adhering to ethical guidelines and professional standards in forensic practice. And despite the challenges and controversy surrounding lie detection methods, there are these ongoing advancements in technology and interdisciplinary collaboration that does offer some promising avenues for future research and practice. For example, integrating multiple sources of information such as behavioral observations, physiological measures, linguistic analysis. When you have a whole battery of these sources, that may enhance the accuracy and reliability of the lie detection method. And also exploring some of the neural correlates of deception, such as neuroimaging techniques from fMRIs, holds potential for for clarifying the underlying mechanisms of deception behavior. So I want to just close out our lecture with a few key terms here. First off, I want to kind of just reiterate what is a microexpression. Remember, that is a small, brief, almost imperceptible, involuntary facial expression that occurs within milliseconds and can reveal concealed emotions or intentions. When we talk about CBCA, or the criteria-based content analysis, what is that? That is a method for evaluating credibility of verbal statements based upon criteria such as content, structure, and context. And what's an fMRI? The functional magnetic resonance imaging. That is a neuroimaging technique that measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow. And this is often used to study the neural correlates of cognitive processes, such as deception. And our question for this week: what is the technology that measures changes in blood flow in the brain to study the neural correlates of deception? Well, I already mentioned that, and you should know that that is the functional magnetic resonance imaging, the fMRI. And so I want to close with this. Lying is a part of life. When you have a conversation with someone over the course of a couple of minutes, chances are either you or the other person will have inserted a lie in there somewhere. We do it for a myriad of reasons, most of which to keep the social flow going and to keep acceptance going between two individuals, because people are afraid of each other deep down. And when we recognize that, we can understand that there's a lot that goes into deception, that it isn't just as simple as reading one microexpression and being able to decide what that means. And I hope that brings some humility to the whole field of lie detection. Hope you enjoyed this week, and I will see you next week. You take care. Bye-bye.